Hello friends, today we are gonna create a beautiful animated portfolio website using React Next.js framework, Framer Motion and Tailwind CSS. When we navigate between our pages, we will see this page transition. Let's open up the About page. We will have a text container here, and on the right side we will create this SVG component. When we scroll down or up, we will animate the parts of this SVG. You will see how easy to do that using Framer Motion scroll progress function. Here we have the skills section. If it's in the viewport, we will see this animation. And the experience section. You can add your job or project history. And after that, we will create a portfolio page. To show our projects, again, we will be using the scroll animation. I'm scrolling down, but my projects are moving horizontally. And here we have another SVG animation. When I click here, the contact page will show up and it will focus on this text input automatically. And this form is functional. When someone writes a message and mail address and clicks on this button, you will receive that message in your mailbox. And this project is responsive. When I click here, we will see the animated menu. For each screen size, we will change the styles using Tailwind. It's a great project to understand Next.js and Framer Motion basics. But if you wanna go deeper and learn every little detail of React and Next.js, you can join my master course waitlist. The details are in the description. After creating this project, we will deploy our website so everybody can access. To do that, we will be using Hostinger. As you know, it's the hosting sponsor of the channel, and I use it for all my projects, and I've never had a single problem. If you want to see how fast it is, you can visit my blog page. And for this project, we are gonna be using the business plan, which is the most popular one. With this plan, you can deploy all your static projects in one hosting. So you can create the demo versions of your apps and showcase them on your portfolio page using different subdomains. By the way, with this plan, you will get a free domain, SSL, and unlimited bandwidth. And if you want to get an extra discount, use the link in the description, choose a time period, and use the Lama Dev coupon code here. After purchasing, you are ready to claim your free domain. I want to claim nextjsportfolio.com. After the registration, let's come back and install our hosting. Create an empty website, choose your domain, and finish the setup. Right after that, you'll be able to see the H panel. In this panel, you can manage your hosting and domains and upload your files using this file manager. So if you are ready, let's create our website and deploy it using this panel. Okay, I created a new folder, and inside this folder, let's create our next application. To do that, you can open up your console and say npx create next app, and it's going to create your application. But if you do that, it's going to create some unnecessary files and styles. So I recommend you use my GitHub repository. Just visit my GitHub page and find this repository, and inside this repository, we are going to have some ESLint configurations. We are going to have all the images we are going to use during this tutorial. And inside source folder, as you can see, we don't have any unnecessary styles or HTML elements. So we are going to write everything from scratch without wasting any time. So let's come back. And here you can directly clone this repository. By the way, this is the starter branch. At the end of the video, I'm going to add here one more branch, and it's going to be the completed version of the application. So if you have any problem, just open up the completed branch and compare your code. Okay, as I said, you can copy this URL and clone this project. but I recommend you fork this project. In this case, it's going to create a new repository in your account. As you can see, this is my test account. If you say create fork, you are going to have your own repository. And in this case, it will be much easier to keep track of your progress. So you can clone your own project instead of mine. I will come back. This is my own project. By the way, this is an open source project. I give you everything for free, so I would appreciate if you could give a star for this project. Okay, so I'm gonna come here, copy my URL, and I will say git clone the URL, and I will say dot and enter. As you can see, our project is here, but we don't have the libraries. Let's install them. I'll say npm install. If you are using yarn, just say yarn and enter. And it's going to create here a new folder. And as you can see, node modules, and it includes all the libraries that our Next.js application needs. Okay, let's start our app. I will say npm run dev. Our project runs on localhost 3000. Let's open up. And it's here. And I opened here our example. Firstly, we are going to design our home page. But before, as you can see, our navbar is on the top of the page. If I open up the about page, it's still here. Portfolio and contact. So basically, this component will be the common component. So when we create our pages, we don't have to add this for each page. Instead, we can use it in our layout. By the way, if you don't know what the layout is, or if you don't know the basics of Next.js, you can watch my previous video. That video includes everything you need to know about the latest version of Next.js. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to open up my VS Code, and inside the source folder, I'm going to create a new folder, and it's going to be components. And the first one will be our navbar. Let's create our component. I'm going to use this shortcut. If you don't know how I'm using this, basically I'm using snippets for the JSX files. As you can see, I have some shortcuts. And for this tutorial, I'm going to be using this one. It basically creates a component with Tailwind class names. Okay, let's write our shortcut, and it's going to create our component. So we can use it in our layout, and inside body, I'm going to create a div, and I'm going to call the navbar, and after our children. So basically it represents our pages. Let's give here a class name. Firstly, the parent will be WScreen and HScreen. It basically means width 100 VW and height 100 VH. So it's going to contain all our viewports. Let's give a background color and see. Let's say 500. As you can see, this is the parent div, and it includes navbar and hello world. If I create here some other pages, let's say about, portfolio, and contact, and I'm going to create my page here, about page. Let's actually copy this here, and here is going to be portfolio page and the contact page. So if I visit some other pages, as you can see, the navbar is still here. Okay, so right now let's change our background color. I'm not sure if it's visible enough or not. You might see here the white color, but actually there is a background transition here. The top part is a light blue color and the bottom is light red. It might not be visible in the video, but when you create, you are gonna see better. So let's do that. instead of this red color, I'm going to create here a linear gradient, bg gradient. It's going to be from top to bottom. So I will say to bottom. And at the top of the div will be blue. From blue, it's going to be really light. As you can see, it's almost white. And the bottom of the page will be red. You can choose 50 or let's say 100. And right now it's much better. Let me give a little bit darker and you are going to understand better. As you can see, this is what we want. So you can give any color you want. Let's open up our example. As you can see, our navbar has a height here, and the rest of the page will be our page component. So let's come here and create a new div. I will say class name, and the height of the navbar will be 24, which means 96 pixels. Let's do the same thing for the children. I'm gonna wrap my children, and if you remember, the height of the component is 100 VH, and 96 pixels of this 100 VH is our navbar, and the rest of the height will be our children. So I need to use a calculation here. I will say H. I cannot use Tailwind here, so I'm gonna use CSS inside these brackets. So I will say calculate 100 VH minus 96 pixels or 6 RAM. It's exactly the same thing here. Right now I'm gonna close everything and open up my navbar. Let's close here. And firstly, I'm gonna center my items. Let's check. As you can see, it's vertically centered and also there is a space on the left and right. Let's do that. Firstly, I will say H full. So it's gonna contain all our div. It was 96 pixels. I'm gonna center items vertically. As you can see, it's centered. And I'm gonna separate my items using justify space between. Let's actually create here 2 items. As you can see, they are separated. But as I said, we are gonna need some space here. To do that, we can use a padding on the x-axis, which means for left and right. But there is something important here. If you are using Tailwind, it applies your styles for the small screen first. Let's open up our example, and I will open my console. And as you can see, there is a space here. This space is increasing. So first we should give a space for the small screens, and after we need to increase it according to our screen size. So for the small screens, let's say padding 4, 16 pixels. After this small screen, we are gonna increase this space. It's gonna be 8, let's say after small. This is how we are specifying our screen size, and px will be 8. And if it's more than medium screen, it's gonna be 12, large screen, 20, and finally for X large screen, 48. Let's see, I'm gonna open my console. Okay, it's smaller and it's getting bigger. This is what we want. Okay, right now we have our space, we centered our items. Let's see what we are gonna need. I'm gonna shrink this page, and as you can see, we have 2 items. This logo and this button. And when I click on this button, it's gonna open up our menu. It covers all our viewport. We are gonna take care of this later, but before, let's create our logo and this button. It's gonna be our logo. Let me actually write here logo so you can see better. And after, it's gonna be the responsive menu. And inside logo, I'm gonna create a link. So when we click on our logo, we are going to be redirected to home page. So let's say href and the home page. And inside, as you can see, we have two items, the name and the extension. So I'm going to create a span, another, and .dev. And let's give a class name here. Firstly, text will be small. The background color will be black. Text color will be white. Actually, this is gonna be white, this is gonna be black, so I'm not gonna specify this here. I'm gonna say rounded MD. Basically, we are giving some border radius. Let's give some padding. Let's change the color of the first element, class name, text white. Okay, and I'm gonna increase the font weight. Font will be semi-bold. Okay, let's give a style for the second element and we can see better. Class name, I'm gonna give some width and height. It's gonna be rounded and its background color will be white and the text color will be black. Like that. Let me zoom in and I can give here a space. So I will say margin right 1. Okay, but I cannot see my height. Let's give here flex. Okay, I'm gonna center my items vertically and horizontally. And I will do the same thing for this component, this span. Flex, item center, justify center. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna zoom out. Our logo is ready. And let's take care of our button. Let me shrink this. Okay. We are gonna have a container. And in this container, we are gonna have 3 lines. Let's do that. I'm gonna come here and create my button. Let's say menu button. And inside we are gonna have 3 lines. Let's create the first one. I will say width 10, height will be 1, background color will be black, and I will say rounded. I'm gonna create 2 more. And for the parent, let's give a class name, and the width will be 10, height will be 8, but this time our items will be vertical. To do that, we can use flex column. As you can see, they are vertical, but I'm gonna separate them. Remember how we are doing this. Justify space between. Just like that. And when I click on this button, I'm gonna change its shape. Let's see. But I'm gonna do this later because we are gonna need framer motion, but we didn't learn this yet. So it can stay like that. When I click on this button, I'm just gonna open up, let me zoom out, this menu. Let's do that. After this menu button, I will say menu list. Let's create our div, and inside this div, we are gonna have our menu items. But instead of writing them one by one, I can create here a list. And using this array, actually let's move this here. Okay, using this array, I can show each link here using their title and URL. I will say links.map, and for each link, I'm gonna create Next.js link component, and the text will be link.title, and href will be link.url. As you can see, there is a warning here because we are using a map, so we have to give here a unique key. And let's say item.title or URL, doesn't matter. Oops, not item, link. As you can see, they are here. Let's give position absolute. I will say top 0, left 0, is going to cover all our screen. So I will say width screen, height screen, and the background color will be black. Text color will be white. Let's see first. Okay, perfect. So let's center our items here. I'm going to be using flags, but remember they should be vertical. Flags column. I'm going to center my items. Let me close this sidebar. Okay. I'm going to give gap between each item. Let's say 8. Perfect. And I'm going to increase the font size. Text 4x large. Of course, we are going to give some animations, but as I said, after learning motion. As you realize, we don't have our button here, so we cannot close our menu. To prevent this, for this button, I'm going to say Z index is going to be 50. And the position will be relative. Of course, we can't see, but as you can see, our cursor is changing. It's here. If I change the color, okay, it's here. So right now, I'm going to create my functionality. Firstly, we are going to need a state that decides whether our menu is open or closed. At the beginning, it's going to be closed. So I'm going to come here and say const open set open. I'm going to create a useState hook. And at the beginning, it's going to be false. In Next.js, if you are using any React hook, your component should be a client component. Use client directive. And again, I explained this in my previous video, where to use client components, where to use server components, what is the hydration, everything is in that video. Okay, so using this state, I can show my menu list. I'm going to write here a condition, and I will say if it's open. As you can see, it's not here anymore. But when I click, I'm going to update my state. Let's come here. And on click event, set open is going to be the opposite of open. If it's true, it's going to be false. If it's false, it's going to be true. You can do the same thing by writing here previous state and the opposite of the previous state. It's exactly the same thing. If it's true, it's going to be false. Let's see. I'm going to click. As you can see, it's here. When I click back, it's gone. This is what we want. Okay, it can stay like that. Let's see what's going to happen if our device size is bigger. As you can see, if it's the medium screen, instead of that button, that responsive menu, we are going to see our items here. And on the right hand side, we are going to have some icons. And our logo is not visible anymore. So what I'm going to do? For the logo, I will say, if it's the medium screen, make it hidden. I will do the same thing for, let's come here, responsive menu. I will say, if it's empty, make this hidden. And instead of those, I'm going to create 2 more divs. It's going to be our links. Let's do the same thing. Links map for each link. I'm going to call Next.js link. It's going to be link.title. href will be link.url. And again, don't forget your unique key. And this time at the beginning, it's going to be hidden. We are not going to see it, but if it's bigger than medium screen, it's going to be display flags. Hidden means display none, and we are going to change it here. And let's give gap between each item. I'm going to increase the size. Our logo and button are display none, and we can see our items here, our links. So I'm going to add 1 more div here. Let's write it after this logo. And inside, link. And I'm going to create my first icon. using image. Source will be github.png. Alt, you can write here any description. We have to give a width and height, let's say 24. Let's check our image, by the way. If you use slash, it's gonna open up the public folder and search for your items. It's here. And href will be, you can write your GitHub account. I'm gonna leave it empty. As you can see, it's here. So let's do the same thing for other items. I'm just gonna copy and paste. It's exactly the same thing. As you can see, Dribble, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. I'm gonna save. Let's make this slash also. Okay. So I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. At the beginning, it's gonna be display none. For the medium screen, it's gonna be display flex, and I'm gonna give some space between them. MD flex, gap 4. And if the screen is even bigger, let's check. We are gonna see our logo. So I'm gonna come here. If it's the large screen, it's gonna be flex. Let's check. Okay, there's something wrong. Oh, LG. Okay. But there's a problem here. We cannot see the problem, but if I add here more items, let's add here actually. I'm gonna duplicate this. As you can see, if this div is bigger, it shifts our other items to the left side, but our logo should be in the center. So to prevent this problem, I'm gonna give exactly the same size for this item, this logo, and this social div. So when they are equal, it's not gonna overflow. Let's get this back. So I'm gonna say width will be 1 divided by 3. So I will do the same thing for the logo and those links. Basically, we are gonna divide our container into 3 pieces. One piece will be those social links, one piece will be our logo, and the other piece will be our links. Let's actually write here links and social. Because when you use Tailwind, it's really hard to see where your containers are. This is why I'm writing comments. You can see better. And for this logo, I'm gonna center my link. Otherwise, as you can see, it's gonna be on the left. Let's give background color and see better. Like that. I'm just gonna center my logo. To do that, I will say justify center. Okay, awesome. Right now, in any case, it's gonna be in the middle. So let's give a style for our items. As you realize, the font size is bigger, but also when I click on an item here, it's changing its background color and text color. But how we are gonna do that? When you use Next.js, it's really easy. Basically, we are gonna take this path name from the URL and we are gonna compare with our link title. If they are equal, we are gonna change its background color. To do that, we can create a new component. Let's say now link. And we are gonna take our link as a prop and show it here. It's gonna be exactly the same thing. Link.title, href, link.url. But how we are gonna find out this path name? We can use path name hook. I'm gonna come here and say use client const path name, use path name hook. As you can see, it comes from Next navigation. And let's see what we have. But of course, we should use this component here. So instead of this link, I'm gonna be using my component. And of course, I'm gonna pass my link here. And don't forget the unique key. Let's import. I'm gonna save and let's see. I'm gonna open up my console, and as you can see, for each item, it returns the path name. And if you check our links in the URL, we have exactly the same string, so we can compare them. If they are equal, we can change the background color. So inside class name, I'm gonna write condition. Firstly, let's give rounded for each item and a padding. And after I will say if the path name equals link URL, the background will be black and the text will be white. And that's all. Let's see. Perfect. If I click, and this is what we want. Okay. Let's increase this font size, by the way. I'm gonna come here and say text X large. Okay, so we've finished designing our Navbar. By the way, as you can see, our logo is getting bigger because we set justify center for any case, but it's gonna be if it's X large and here. Okay. Let's close our console and take care of our home page. Okay, let's open up our console and see what we are going to create. As you can see, we are going to have here a container, and it's going to include our image container and text container. Let's do that. I'm going to open up my home page, and this is going to be our parent container, and inside image container and a text container. As you can see, they are going to be vertical, so we can use flexbox and flex column, and the half of the screen will be image container and the other half will be text container. Let's add here our image, Next.js image. I'm going to write my source. It's going to be this image, hero.png. And if you are using Next.js image, you have to give here width and height, but also you can say fill, and it's gonna cover the entire parent div. But in this case, don't forget you have to write here relative. Let's open up console. Okay, our image is not here. Let's give background color and see. Okay, it's not visible because our container doesn't have any height. I'm just gonna come here and say h full. Okay, still not here. Let's open up our layout. It should work. Oh, so you shouldn't give here any space. This was the reason. So let's remove this also. And let's get back to the home page. As you can see, our image is here, but to keep its aspect ratio, I have to come here and say class name, object width will be contain. Like that. It looks much better right now. And let's create our texts. This is gonna be h1 tag, a p tag, and after I'm gonna create a new div which includes those buttons. Let's say title, description, and after another div and two buttons. First one will be view my work and other will be contact me. Let's write here buttons. Okay, that's all. Let's give our style. As you can see, it's bigger and the font is bolder. And the first button is background black, text color white, and we are gonna give here border radius. Let's do that. It's really easy. By the way, I can give here flex column, because I wanna give gap between each item. It's gonna be 8. Let's center our items vertically and horizontally. For the H1 tag, let's say text for X large. Font will be bold. For the description, I'm not gonna give anything for now. For the buttons, it's gonna be flexbox, and the gap between items will be 4. Let's change those items. Firstly, I'm gonna give some padding, and they are gonna be rounded algae. I'm gonna give a ring, and the ring color will be black. It's gonna be something like a border, but I'm gonna change this background and text color. Let's choose this one. Background black, text white. Okay, as you can see, we don't have any padding. Let's give exactly the same padding that we gave for this navbar. I'm gonna open up navbar and copy here and paste for my container. Just like that. It looks pretty good, but after the large screen, by the way, I'm gonna increase this font size for the medium screen. Let's say MD 6x large, and I'm gonna increase here also. Okay, perfect. And for the big screens, it's gonna be flex direction row. It's not gonna be vertical anymore. If it's LG, flex direction will be row. Our image is not here anymore because we don't have any width. This time, each container is gonna contain the whole height, but the width will be 50%. Let's do that. I will say if it's large screen, H will be full, but width will be 50%. I will do the same thing for the other container here. Just like that. By the way, those items are here, but we centered them. Let's come here and say width full and perfect. It's that easy. Let's make this bigger. Perfect. And right now we can create our other page, or we can start giving our animations. Okay, before starting other pages, let's see how to use Framer Motion. I'm gonna come here, open my console, a new console here, and I will say npm install Framer Motion. Let's open up the documentation. As you can see, to use Framer Motion, we should create our HTML elements like that. Motion.div, motion.h1, or whatever it might be. And after, we can add here any animation we want. In this prop, we can say x 100, opacity 0, height, text size, color, background color, rotation, whatever it might be. As you can see, when you say x, it's gonna move on the x-axis. When you say animate y, you can give any number and move that on the y-axis. You can rotate, and using the transition prop, you can decide the animation duration, animation timing function. You can give any delay. You can make your animation infinite, And you can give any initial value. Let's actually test it in our application and you are going to understand better. Instead of showing you documentation, I'm going to close everything. And inside app directory, I'm going to create a new folder. Let's say test animation. Let's create our page. Of course, JS or JSX. Test page. And let's open up here. Okay, right now let's enter everything inside our page. Flex, align center, justify center. Of course, the height should be full. And after that, I'm going to create here a div. Let's give some size. Background color will be red. Let's say 400. And I will say rounded. Okay, remember how we are using framer motion. I'm just going to come here and say motion and my HTML element. Of course, we should import this. Import motion from framer motion. Of course, everything is happening on the user browser. If you are using any interaction, the component should be a client component. And it's ready to animate. I'm going to close my sidebar and let's give any initial state. I'll say initial. The position X will be 100. And when we animate this, I'm going to change its position. Let's say 100. So when we open our page, its position will be -100 and it's going to run this animation and change its position on the x-axis. Let's see, I'm going to refresh. As you can see, this is what we want. Let's increase here and I will say Y, for example, 300. I'm going to refresh. I can give opacity 0.5. And you can give anything you want. And using transition prop, you can give any delay, let's say 2 seconds, and the animation duration will be 4 seconds. So when I refresh the page, it's gonna wait 2 seconds, and after it's gonna run this animation. Let's refresh. 1, 2, and after it starts, and it takes 4 seconds. This is how easy to give animations. And if you have multiple animations, you can create them on your component and use them according to any condition. What I mean by that? Let's come here and say const variants. And I'm gonna have 2 variants, for example. Variant 1, let's give exactly the same animation here. And if it's variant 2, let's make it 100, -300. Rotation, for example, 90 degrees. I can give any other, but for now it can stay like that. So instead of writing our animation like that, firstly I can add my variants. It basically says I'm gonna use either this animation or this animation. How we are gonna decide this? We are just gonna pass it here. It's gonna be variant 1, for example. I'm gonna refresh. As you can see, this is the first animation. If I say variant 2, and the second animation. And this is really useful if you have any condition here. Basically, you can say if condition, use variant 2. If it's not, use variant 1. It's important because in our application, remember, we have a state here, open or closed. And according to that state, we are gonna give our animations. If it's open, our animation is gonna run. Okay. What else you can do? Let's take this back. I can come here and create my transition here. Again, you can give any duration, any delay, anything you want. In this case, we don't need this transition here. I'm gonna refresh. Okay. Of course, you don't have to write initial. And this is basically how we are giving framer motion animations. Of course, we are gonna deep dive into some advanced methods, but for now, we can give animation for the Navbar. Let's do that. I'm gonna open up the home page and my console here, and let's give our first animation. I'm gonna zoom in. Remember, when I click here, we are gonna change the position of the first and third item, and we are gonna remove the second item. So we can say opacity 0, so it's not gonna be visible, and we are gonna give rotation for the first and third item. By the way, at the beginning, remember, it's black. Let's take this back. I'm gonna close here and open up my Navbar. I'm gonna change here. Okay, so let's create our variants. But before, remember, we have to write here motion and import this. Okay, so I'm gonna come here and say const top variants. Basically, this is gonna be variants for the first item. And remember, we have two conditions, closed and opened. If it's closed, we are not gonna have any rotation, it's gonna be 0. And if it's opened, the rotate will be 45 degrees. And also, I'm gonna change its background color. Of course, I'm gonna need a comma here. And it's gonna be, remember at the beginning, black, it's gonna be white. But if you are using animation for the background colors or any colors, I recommend you use RGB colors. If you directly say black to white, you are not gonna see any animation. To prevent this, I'll say RGB code and white color. Let's do the same thing for the second item. Let's say center. If it's closed, its opacity will be 1. So it's gonna be visible. If it's open, it's gonna be 0. Let's remove them. And one more, I'm gonna copy this and paste, and it's gonna be the last item. Bottom, again, rotate 0, and it's gonna be minus 45. Let's give our variants for the items. The first one will be top variants, center, and bottom. We are gonna need some additional class name for the first and third item, but for now, let's see what's gonna happen. Of course, we should give here our animation. And I can write here my condition. Remember, we have a state here. The open state, basically I'm gonna say if it's open, use the opened variant. If it's not, use the closed variant. If it's open, opened. If it's not, closed. You can give any name you want. Let's see. I'm gonna click As you can see, their colors are white. The second item is not visible, but there is something wrong with our first and third items. Because when we give a rotation, they are rotating from this center point. But in our example, this point and this point is not gonna change. We are gonna move only the other parts. In this case, our origin is not gonna be center, it's gonna be left side. How we are gonna handle this? I'm gonna come here and say origin and left. By default, it's center, but we are changing this. Let's do the same thing for the third item. I'm gonna click and perfect. This is what we want. So let's create variants for our list and list items. Let me zoom out. When I click, as you can see, our list comes from the right side. And for each item, we have an opacity animation. Let's do this again. As you can see, we have an animation for this entire screen and also for each item. But there is something important here. There is a stagger effect here. There is a delay between each animation. Let me show you how to do that. Firstly, let's take care of our list div here. So I will say motion, and I'm gonna write my variants. I will say const list variants. Again, closed. Its position will be 100 with W. And if it's open or opened, whatever you say, the X will be 0. Basically, at the beginning, it's going to be closed and its position will be out of our screen. It's going to be beyond our viewport, somewhere here. And when we start our animation, it's going to come from the right side and it's going to stop here. This is why we are saying X0. Let's use it. I will say variants. You can say initial, closed, and animate, opened. Let's see. I'm gonna zoom out and click. As you can see, this is what we want. As you can see, our image is visible. To prevent this, we can give z index, let's say 40. Okay, awesome. And what about those items? I'm gonna give motion here, but it's not an HTML element, it's a Next.js component. If you want to use motion, you can create here a div. Let's drop our link component, and I can write here motion. In this case, our key should be in the parent, like that. And again, for each item, I'm gonna create variant, and let's say list item variants. Let's create this. If it's closed, X will be -10, opacity will be 0, and if it's open, it's gonna be 0 and 1. But how we are gonna give the delay effect for each item? It's really easy. I'm gonna come here to parent div, and after my animations, I can say transition and stagger children, and let's say 0.2 seconds. So when you do that, it automatically affects our children, and for each child, it's gonna add this delay. Let's see. I'm gonna click, as you can see. Perfect. And as soon as I click here, it starts animating our children. But you might want to animate your list container here and after your children. To do that, I can come here and say when before children. In this case, it's gonna run first, and after it's gonna animate our children. I'm gonna click. As you can see, this is what I want. It's that easy. Okay. I can close my console. We have finished our home page and Navbar. But how we are gonna give the transition effect for each page? Let's open up our example. When I click here, as you can see, there's a transition effect, and after we see our page. Like that. To do that, we can use Framer Motion Animate Presence component. Let's check. Where is the search button? Oh, okay. We don't need it. It's here. It allows our components to animate out when they are removed from the React tree. So what does it mean? In our homepage, we are using the homepage component, but when I click here, we are gonna remove this homepage and we are gonna show the about page. During this navigation, we can give some transition effects using this. Let's see how to do that. As you can see, again, we can give initial and animate, but additionally, we can give the exit prop here. So when we switch between our pages, we can apply this exit animation. Let me show you and you are going to understand better. Let's close here, open up our menu, and inside layout, remember we have a div here which includes our navbar and our page. Right now I can wrap this div with this animate presence component. But there is a problem here. Remember, if you are using motion, your component should be a client component. But if you do this in the layout, you will not be able to use a metadata, because to do that, your component should be a server component. By the way, let's change this description to best animated portfolio page. So instead of using this here, let's create another component and wrap our children with that component. I'm going to come here and say transition provider. And right now I will say use client, animate presence. Let's import. And we are going to take the children here. And right now I can copy here. Actually, let's cut and paste it here. Let's import our navbar. And right now I can call my component here. Transition provider. Of course, we should pass here our children, because we are using it here. I'm gonna remove this navbar. And right now our new layout is transition provider. Before changing each page, I can create this dark background effect. Let's create here a div, motion div. Let's import. Framer motion. This is going to be basically the black background, so I can self-close this. We are not going to have anything inside. And I will say class name, age screen, width screen. It's going to contain all our viewport, and its position will be fixed. Background color will be black. And if you realize there's a border radius, let's click. As you can see, Let's click again. So it's not gonna be sharp. Rounded. It's gonna be only the bottom, and I can give any specific size, 100 pixels. You can say small, X large, whatever you want, and also you can give any specific size here. And I'm gonna say Z index because it's gonna be over everything. It's gonna cover our screen. And right now I can give my animation. Animate. The height will be 0VH. So it's not gonna be visible. And when we exit our page, when we change our path name, the height will be 100 VH. I can give any transition here. Let's say duration 0.5. And I can give any timing function is out. So at the beginning it's gonna be faster, and at the end of the animation it's gonna be a little bit slower. Let's remove this. And let's see. When I change my page, nothing is gonna happen because our component doesn't know when to trigger this animation. So we have to pass here a unique key, and whenever this key changes, it's gonna trigger our animation. When we navigate between our pages, remember our path name is changing and it's unique, so we can use it. Whenever it changes, it's gonna trigger our animation. Remember how we can call our path name. Use path name. And I'm gonna pass it here. So if I click, as you can see, the exit animation works. If I say a little bit bigger, it's gonna contain all our screen. We are not gonna see this white part. And perfect. But in this point, I want to create one more div, and when the first animation ends, its animation is gonna start, but in this case, its initial position will be the entire screen, and it's gonna go back to the bottom. What I mean by that? Let's see again. Of course, it's gonna be really fast, but I'm gonna try to explain. When I click on any link here, we are gonna see our first item, this item, and when the animation ends, we are gonna see another item, but the animation direction will be different. When I click, as you can see, there's a border radius on the top. Let's see it again. This is the first, and this is the second. It's really fast. First, second. So in this case, I will say, but this time it's gonna be 0VH. I will say transition. Remember, we can directly write it in our animation, so we don't need this. It's gonna be our animation and initial. And I'm gonna give here a delay. Remember, the first animation takes 0.5 seconds, and right after that, this animation is gonna start. Actually, let's make this 2, and you can see better. And I'm gonna change its color. And remember, the rounded part is the top part. And I will say bottom 0, because it's gonna come from top to bottom. And by the way, let's say 500. It said animation, it's gonna be animate. Let's try, and we are gonna have another problem. Let's see, when I click, as you can see, the red item is already there. First item is moving, but the red item is behind it. That's because we said the initial is 140 VH. That means it's gonna be in the background, and after 2 seconds it's gonna animate, but we have to wait this animation first. It's gonna exit, and after we are gonna see our animation. To do that, I'm gonna come here and say mode and wait. In this case, it's gonna wait the first animation. Let's see. I'm gonna click first animation and after the second one. Let's see again. First, it's moving back. Our red color is here. So if I say black, you are not gonna see the first animation going back to the initial point. Let's try again. First one, it's the second one, and moving. First one is going, and second one is visible right now. It's that easy. So what about our path name? Let's see our example. I'm gonna click here. As you can see, it says portfolio, contact, about page. We don't have any path name here, so it's empty. So let's create another div. It's not gonna be staff close. We are gonna write a text here, and it's gonna be our path name. I'm gonna change this class name. Again, it's gonna be fixed. I will say margin auto because I'm gonna center this. To do that, we can use top 0. Every direction will be 0. And if I say margin auto, we are gonna see our text in the middle of the screen. Text will be white. It's gonna be 8x large. And I don't wanna see the text cursor. To prevent this, cursor default. Let's give a background and we can see better. And the index will be 50. It's gonna be over this div. Let me close this sidebar. I'm gonna click here. As you can see, its size covers all our screen. To prevent this, I will say width, fit, and height, fit. So its size will be only the size of this string. Okay. So let's play around here. Its opacity will be 0. And here, it's gonna be 1. If I do it like that, we keep seeing our text here, as you can see. When I click, it's gonna fade out and it's gonna show our new path name, but it's still here. To prevent this, I can give initial and animate it to 0. Let's say initial. I'll click. Okay, it's here and it's gone. Of course, it's too long. Let's make this 0.5 back. And maybe I can increase here. Let's see. I'm gonna click and perfect. Of course, there's a slash sign here. To prevent this, I can say substring, and I'm gonna remove the first one. Perfect. Okay, this is how we are giving transition effect. What else we can do? During this transition, we can give different animation for our homepage items. Because let's come back. As soon as I click here, we are gonna see our image and text here. As you can see, they are there, but it doesn't make sense. We should see our transition first and after our component. To do this, I'm gonna open up my page component. I'll say use client. Motion, framer motion. And I'm gonna give motion here. Actually, let's create another div. And wrap my entire component. Class name will be again age full. initial will be y-axis and let's say minus 200 VH. It's going to be under our viewport, and when we animate, it's going to be 0. And let's give transition, and duration will be 1. Let's come here, and when I click, as you can see, it's empty, and after we see this effect. Okay, perfect. So I can do the same thing for other pages. I'm gonna copy this for about page. Contact page and portfolio. I will say import motion. Let's paste this for contact and about. Okay. Let's see. Perfect. Oops. Because I didn't save. Perfect. Let's come back. Okay, it works. Right now you know how to create page transitions. So let's take care of our about page. Let's see our example. I'm going to open up my terminal. As you can see at the beginning, we are going to have a container which includes this biography section, skills section, and experience section. But when the page is bigger, we are going to see this SVG also. So let's close everything and open up about page. So firstly, we are going to have a container. And inside this container, we are going to have text container. And we are going to have the SVG container. At the beginning, it's not going to be visible, so I will say hidden. And inside text container, we are going to have 3 sections. Biography, and 2 more is going to be skills and experience. This is the main structure of our about page. Firstly, I want to give my spaces. Let's open up the mobile screen first. I'm going to give exactly the same paddings. Let's open up Navbar again. Copy here from small to X large. And I'm going to paste it here. But if I do that, it's going to give space for the right side also. Let's open up our example. As you can see, there is no space here. This SVG contains all these div. So instead of giving here, I'm going to give my padding for the text container. And instead of X, I can actually say drag the padding. And for the text container, I will say flexbox, and it's going to be vertical. So I will say flex column, gap between each item. Let's actually say the text of the sections, and we can see it better. Okay, gap 24. But if I increase the size, I want to increase this gap also. So for MD, it's going to be 32. If it's large, it's gonna be 48. For X large, it's gonna be 64. Let me close sidebar. X. Just like that. Okay. Let's see what's inside the biography. We are gonna have a title, description, there is a quote here, our signature, and this SVG button. So again, it's gonna be vertical flags. Gap between each item will be 12, and I'm gonna center them. We are gonna have H1. Let's copy paste. Description, so I can say P tag. After that, I'll say span is gonna be a quote. I'm not sure this quote is a good idea for your own biography or not, because it's like you are Einstein or something. But anyway, it looks great. And after, I'm gonna create a div which includes our SVG signature. And finally, I'm gonna copy this. Actually, let's write our comments, otherwise it won't be easy to see. Description, quote, signature, and scroll SVG. Okay, let's give here our signature like that. If you don't know how to create this SVG, just install Figma, open up a new file, and choose a pencil here and draw any shape you want. This is a quick example, I'm gonna use it. And after creating your signature, just export it as SVG and paste it here. Let's see. Okay, they are here. Let's increase this size. Move this signature to the right side. I will come here and for the H1 tag, font will be bold, text will be 2x large. And for the P tag, maybe it's bigger. For the quote, it's gonna be italic. And for this SVG, self and. Perfect. And we are gonna give animation, but first, let's take care of skills. Let's see what we have. As you can see, again, a title, and for each item, we are gonna create different div. I'm gonna actually copy this and this title. And I'm gonna paste it like that. Skill title, skill list, and again, scroll SVG. Let's copy and paste this like that. Let's create our skills. First one will be JavaScript, and it's gonna be rounded. I'm gonna give padding, text will be small, cursor will be pointer, background color, and the text color will be white. Let's see. Okay, and when I hover over, I'm gonna change its color. When I hover over, background will be white, and the text color will be black. just like that. Let's create some more. Actually, I can copy and paste. I don't want to waste time. You can write here your own skills, just like that. So how I'm gonna separate them? Inside the parent, I'm gonna give flexbox, and gap between each item will be 4. Just like that. But right now it's horizontal and it's overflowing. To prevent this, I'm gonna say flex wrap. And in this case, if it doesn't fit inside the container, our flexbox is gonna move the rest of the items inside the new line, like this. We are gonna take care of this background, but for now, let's take care of experience. Again, we are gonna have exactly the same title, and after that, we are gonna have a container. And in this container, we are gonna add different jobs, and each job container includes 3 parts. The first part, the second part, this line, and the third part. In this case, it's gonna be empty. If we write our job on the right hand side, in this case, the left side will be empty. Let's create, and you are gonna understand better. Inside experience again, h1 tag. Actually, let's copy and paste. And here, we are gonna need this class name also. Just like this. Okay, but as you can see, there is no space here. I will say padding bottom 48. Okay, it's much better. And let's add our jobs. Again, a container, experience list, and let's say list item. And as I said, it's gonna have the left side, center, and right. Let's create our first item. It's gonna have a title, description, job date, and finally the company name. Job company. And let's say Apple. And for the center, we are going to have this line. Let's create a line. And as you can see, we are going to have one more item inside this line. It's going to be this circle. So inside line, I'm going to create another div, and it's going to be circle. And for the right side, we are not going to have anything. It's going to be empty. And let's create second one. In this case, the left side will be empty. The right side will be our job. So what I'm going to do, let's take this list item and paste 2 more. This is the third one. This is the second one. In this case, I'm gonna remove them and paste inside the right. Okay, we have 3 items. Let's give a style. Let's check again. For the first item, I'm gonna give flex box. It's gonna be horizontal, and I'm gonna separate my items. I will say flex, justify between, and I can give any specific height. Let's say 48. Let's see. Oops, it's the second item. Actually, I should remove the second and the third. Because we can create them after giving our style. And let's give specific width for each item. For the left and right side, we are going to give exactly the same size, but for the center, for this line, our size will be smaller. For the left side, I'll say 1/3. For the right side, it's going to be exactly the same, but for the center, for this line, it's going to be 6. It's going to be much smaller. Let's give background and you are going to see better. Let's say darker and light. Just like that. What about our title? Let's increase the font weight. Firstly, I'm going to give background color. It's going to be white. I'm going to give some padding. Font will be semi-bold. And I'm going to give border radius. But as you can see, for the top left, and bottom right are rounded. But this side is 0. How we are going to do this? Basically, I'll say rounded bottom LG. So the bottom of the div will be rounded and also rounded start LG. So top left will be LG also. Okay. Let's see. Okay, it's here. For this description, I'm gonna decrease the font size. I'm gonna give padding again. Text will be small. And I will say italic. And for this date, again, padding 3. Text will be red. Again, small. And the font weight will be semi-bold. And finally, for this company, again, white background. I'm gonna give padding but smaller. Again, rounded. BG white. And text will be small. And again, font semi-bold. Okay, let's remove those backgrounds. Actually, it can stay here. We don't have line for now. Let's see. Okay, but let's take care of this background color because we cannot see our items backgrounds. So I'm gonna come here and for this container, age full. But when it overflows, we will be able to scroll. Just like this. It's much better right now. By the way, I can decrease this width. Let's search for Apple. And I'm gonna say width fit. Okay, awesome. So what about this line? Let's check. We are just gonna have a normal line, but inside we are gonna create a circle and its position will be absolute. This is how we can see it on our line. Let's do that. So I will say width 1, age will be full. I'm gonna give background, it's gonna be gray. Let's say 600. I will say rounded and relative. I say relative because, as I said, our circle will be position absolute. Let's see first our line. As you can see, it's here. Let's remove this background. I'll say size 5. Rounded will be full. So it's going to be a circle. I'm going to give a ring. So it's going to be like a border. And the ring color will be red. I'm going to give background. It's going to be white. Let's see. Okay. So how I'm gonna center this? Remember, its size is 5 and the size of this line is 1. So if I say left -2, it's gonna be centered. Okay, awesome. It's that easy. So let's create the other ones. Right now I can copy and paste experience list item. And for the second one, we are not going to have any text. On the left side, I'm going to cut and paste inside right. Just like that. Perfect. Let's see. And in this point, as you can see, we are able to see our SVG. In this case, our container is going to be horizontal. I'm going to come here. For this container, I will say if it's a large screen, make this flex. Let's actually make this visible. If it's LG, it's going to be block. And we can give any specific height for our left and right side. As you can see in our example, at the beginning, this right side is smaller. If it's 2 units, it's going to be 1 unit. But if it's bigger, they are going to be equal. 1 unit and 1 unit. So I will say 1, 3. But if it's X large, it's going to be the half of the screen. Let's do the same thing for the other container, text container here. In this case, for the small screens, it's going to be 2 out of 3. And if it's large, it's going to be the half. And also remember, we gave here paddings. But in this example, if the SVG is visible, there is no space here. So I will say, by the way, it's going to be LG. If it's LG, the padding right will be 0. Okay, of course we didn't create our SVG yet. Let's create. If I write this SVG inside the about page, it's going to be really long. It's already more than 250 lines. So I'm going to create a new component. And let's say brain. I'm going to paste here my SVG, but before, let's say use clients and motion. Let's give a size. It's going to be full. And inside, I'm going to paste my SVG. You can find this SVG in the GitHub repository. Don't worry about the animation for now. Let's take care of the design part first. Let's use it here. Brain component. And it's here. But there is something important here. This is going to be sticky. Let's do that. I will say position sticky and top will be 0. Let's give Z index and perfect. Okay. Let's see the big screen. Awesome. When it's small, it's not going to be visible anymore. So let's give our animation. Let's check here. I'm going to close my console, and when I scroll down, as you can see, each part moves in a different direction and with a different speed. When I scroll up or down, we are going to take our scroll position, and using that position, we are going to move the part of this brain. If you remember, this is our scroll container. Using this container, I can calculate my scroll position. To do that, we are going to be using useScroll hook, I'll say const. I'm gonna leave here empty for now. I'll say useScroll. And inside, I should provide my scroll container. Container will be this container. But to pass this container here, we are gonna need to use ref hook. I will say const, that's a container ref, use ref hook, and I'm gonna pass it here. And right now I can use it in my useScroll hook. And here I can destructure my scroll Y progress. As you can see, you can use the progress of the x-axis or y-axis. We are gonna need this one. And let's see what we have. I'm gonna open my console. Oops, this is not our app here. By the way, I forgot deleting those. Now link here. Okay. As you can see, the position of the Y scroll is 0. The position is 0.95. That means our scroll position is between 0 and 1. At the beginning, in this point, when our container starts, it's 0. When it ends, it's gonna be 1. So using this changing value, we can give rotation animation. So let's pass this value. Here, our component. I'm gonna take this as a prop. And before using this value, let's see what we are gonna do. Let's choose one of them. Let's see first. Okay, it's behind. Maybe something more recognizable. Okay, this one. If I say motion path and let's say animate, rotate 100 degree, and I'm gonna give transition effect, and the duration will be 2 seconds. As you can see, this is the animation we want to give. Let's see again. Okay, but right now, instead of this value, we are gonna use this scroll Y progress, and we are gonna create different rotation animations. Some of them will be slower and some of them will be faster. But how we are gonna use it? To do that, we are gonna need useTransform hook. Let's create an example. I'll say const rotate forward useTransform. It comes from framer motion. And I'm gonna pass here scroll Y progress, and I'm gonna map through my values. Remember, it's from 0 to 1. And using these values, we are gonna decide our rotation degree. And it's gonna be, let's say, 0 to 360. When it's 0, it's gonna be 0. When we scroll down, it's gonna increase, and at the end, it's gonna be 360 degrees. Let's use it somewhere. Where was that? Okay, here. Right now, instead of animate, I'm gonna be using style. And I will say rotate and rotate forward. I'm using style because if you say animate, it's gonna run only once. And since the initial point is 0, it's not gonna move. Let's see right now. I'm gonna scroll. As you can see, this is what we want. At the beginning, it's 0. If I scroll, it's gonna be 360. It's that easy. Right now, let's remove this and those. And I'm gonna create different rotation animations. Let me actually copy and paste. Like that. As you can see, we have 4 types of forward progress and 4 types of backward. And if they are backward, our value will be minus. Let's use them. For this one, for example, I will say style, rotate, forward 1. I'm gonna copy this, paste here. For this one, let's say forward 4, for example. Let's see. And I will do the same thing for each part. I don't want to waste time. I will just copy and paste. And let's see. I'm gonna scroll and perfect. This is what we want. And we will use the same scrolling function for the portfolio. We are gonna calculate our Y position, and using this position, we are gonna scroll our items on the X axis. But before doing that, let's take care of this animation and this one. So I'm gonna close this component. And again, we are gonna need a function that calculates if our container is on the viewport or not. To do that, we are gonna be using useInView hook. I'm gonna delete this and I will say skill ref. Again, we are gonna need a useRef hook. And I will say const is skill ref in view. Use in view hook. And we are gonna pass here our ref. Let's use it in our container here, skill container. And when we see this container in the viewport, this value will be true. And using this value, we can give different animation for example, this h1 tag or this list. Let's do that. I will say motion.h1 and let's say initial x will be -300, for example. And I will say animate, and I can write my condition. Is skill ref in view? The x will be 0. If it's not gonna change. Again, you can give here any transition. Let's say delay and 0.2. Because when we see our container, I don't want to start this immediately. It's gonna wait a little bit and after it's gonna start. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll. As you can see, perfect. If you don't want to see this animation anytime we see our container, you can write here once and true. In this case, we are going to see our animation for the first time, but if I scroll back, as you can see, it's not moving anymore. I'm going to comment this out. You can use it. And also you can give here any margin -100 pixels. In this case, I'm gonna scroll down. As you can see, our container is here, but there is no animation. Only if I scroll 100 pixels more, it's gonna move. Okay, let's do the same thing for the list. I'm gonna copy here. Let's paste. Perfect. And let's do the same thing for experience. I'm gonna create my ref and my function. Let's say experience. We don't need this. I'm gonna delete. And this is our experience container. I will say ref, experience ref, and using this value, we are gonna animate our h1 tag. Again, initial. Let's give exactly the same thing, minus 300 pixels. You can give whatever you want. And animate will be is experience ref in view is gonna be 0. And transition. And I'm gonna copy this and paste here. Okay, what about this SVG? Let's see again. As you can see, it's moving on the y-axis and we are changing its opacity. This is our SVG. I will say motion. At the beginning, the opacity will be, let's say 0.2, and y will be 0. And when we animate, it's gonna be 1, and the y position will be, let's say 10 pixels. And I'm gonna give a transition, and I will say repeat and infinity. In this case, it's not gonna stop. I will give a duration, let's say 3 seconds, and I'm gonna give a timing function, and let's say easy in out. Just like that. Okay, let's copy this and paste for the other SVG here. Firstly, I will say motion, and that's all. Okay, so let's take care of our portfolio page. Let's see what we have. When I scroll down, as you can see, everything is normal for now, but in this point, we are moving our projects on the x-axis. And as you can see, my scroll bar is going down. And that means the container includes all our project is position sticky. It stays here all the time. But at the ending, as you can see, we are able to scroll on the y-axis. So let's do the same thing. We are going to take our scroll y progress and we are going to be using useTransform hook. But before, I want to create a container that includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 full screen component, because when we use scroll y progress, we are going to need our reference point and its height will be 600 VH. What I mean by that? Let's close here and open up our portfolio page. I'm going to create here a div and let's say height 600 VH. And I'm going to write here my ref. Let's say ref, and let's use our hook. Const ref equals use ref hook. And using this ref, I'm going to reach my y progress. Use scroll hook, and I'm going to pass my ref here. You can use container or target, doesn't matter. And scroll y progress. And after that, we are going to move our items on the x-axis. So I will say x and use transform hook. Remember how we are doing this. We are going to pass our y progress. We are going to map this progress and give here any position. Let's say at the beginning it's going to be 0% and 100%. We are going to give this animation, but before, let's create this component. I'm going to create a div, and I will say my works. It's going to be wScreen, h will be 100 VH, but remember, we have our Navbar here. If you want to, you can calculate it. If you want to, you can leave it like that. I want to calculate 100 VH minus, remember, our Navbar is 6 RAM, and I'm gonna center my text. I will say item center and justify center. Let's increase our text size. It's gonna be 8x large, and I will say text center. There is something wrong here. Oops, I forgot. Quotes. Okay. And after that, I'm gonna create my project container, and it's gonna be display flex, so we can see our items horizontally. And as I said, its position will be sticky. I will say div, the position will be sticky. I will say top 0. In this case, I'm gonna give here relative. Otherwise, it's gonna be over our navbar. I don't wanna do that. It's gonna start from this point. I will say flex. H will be screen. Gap between each item. I'm gonna center my items. And inside, we can create our items. Let's see what we are gonna need. As you can see, we need a title, image, description, and a button here. So instead of writing them one by one, I'm gonna create a list. Let's create here. As you can see, title, description, image, and link. And also we have the background color here, because in our example, it's pink to blue, blue to purple, purple to pink. So we are gonna use those colors. So I will say items.map. For each item, we are gonna create a div. We are gonna need a unique key, remember, and it's gonna be item.id. And inside, I will create another div because this is gonna be our container, this full screen container. And inside, I'm gonna create one more container, and it's gonna include our text, image, description, and button. Inside, we are gonna have h1 tag. Let's say item.title. We are gonna have an image. To do that, we can create a container, image container. Remember, it should be relative. Next.js image. Source will be item.image. And I will say fill. After that, we are going to have a description, item.description, and finally a button. Let's say link, create here a button, and let's write here our text. And the link href will be item dot, what was the name? Link. Okay, for the main div, as I said, it's going to be full screen. I will say flex, item center, justify center, and background will be gradient to right side. And I'm going to write here the item color. Of course, to do that, we are going to need a backtick instead of quote, like that. Remember, our color is something like that, from red to blue, from blue to violet. So we can use it directly like this. And after that, we have another container, and it's going to be Flexbox again, but our items will be vertical, flex column, gap between each item, and the text color will be white. As you can see, there's something wrong here because Next.js doesn't allow us to use an external image. If you want to use this domain name, you have to add it to your Next.js configuration. Let's do that. I'm going to open up my menu, find the Next.js config, and inside, I will say images. I'm going to add here remote patterns. And you can directly add your domain name here, or if you need an extra configuration, you can write it inside an object like protocol. It's going to be only HTTPS. And the host name is going to be our domain, like that. If you want to, you can add other domains like this. We are going to be using only paxhouse.com. And let's refresh. It's going to restart your application. And after, you are going to see your items. Okay, our items are not full screen. Let's check. This is our main container. But after that, we didn't create any wrapper. It's going to be flexbox, so we can see our items horizontally. Let's wrap our items and see right now. Okay, perfect. Right now I can scroll on the x-axis. As you can see, our bar is here, but I don't want to see that. So I will say overflow hidden. Okay, right now I cannot scroll, but don't worry, using our scroll progress, we are gonna move this wrapper on the x-axis. To do that, we are gonna need motion div. And remember, we have our x value, we can use it here. We are not using animate, be careful here. We have to use style. And I'm just gonna pass my x value here. It basically means x equals x. I don't have to do that, I can pass it directly. And let's see right now. As you can see, we had a mistake, it's gonna be minus 100. I'm gonna go back, scroll down, and awesome. Okay. But as you realize, there is something wrong here. We cannot see our first item because we have started our Y progress here. At this point, it's gonna be 0. When I scroll down, it's gonna start moving, but I don't wanna do that. If you want to, you can play around this value, or you can add here one more div. Let's do that actually. Here, I'm gonna add one more div. It's gonna be empty, so I can self close this. And it's going to be exactly the same class name. And the background color, let's say, from purple to red. In this case, our container will be here, and perfect. And as you can see, there's a space here. Prevent this, you can change this value, let's say 80%. And perfect. And after that, we are going to need one more component here. Let's create, after our project container here, I'm going to create another div, and it's going to be full screen again. Flex column, gap between each item, and let's center them. We are gonna have an h1 tag, and let's see what's the text. Do you have a project? And after that, we are gonna create an SVG. to give this animation. To do that, I'm going to create another div. It's going to be the SVG container, and it's going to be relative. Because we are going to create another div here, this circle, and its position will be absolute. This is why we need this relative parent. And inside, I'm going to pass here a circle SVG. And after that, let's create this circle. Is going to be a link. And I will say, hire me. Let's give class name. It's going to be 16, height 16. And if it's the medium screen, I'm going to increase this size. And its position will be absolute. I will say top 0, left 0, because it's going to be in the middle. Remember how we are doing this. Every direction is 0, and if you say margin auto, it's going to center our item. Background will be black, and the text color will be white. And it's going to be a circle, so I will say rounded full. And let's see. Okay, there is something wrong because I didn't give href. Let's say contact page. Okay, it ends here. Oh, it should be under this div. Okay, perfect. Let's center this text. I'm gonna give flex, item center, justify center. Okay, so what about our SVG? As you can see, we have a circle here, but in our example, we have a text, front-end developer and UI designer. Let's add this text. I'm gonna come here inside SVG. I will say text. The color will be black. And inside, I'm gonna add my text path. Let's write our text. And UI designer. And I should give here this circle ID because our text is gonna follow this path. To do that, I'm gonna say xlink href and this ID. And let's increase our text size, x large. Let's see right now. Of course, it's gonna be hashtag because it's an ID. Okay, it's not here. Let's see our SVG. I didn't give any size. I'll say class name, background, red 500. Okay, it's not visible because we don't have any width and height. Let's give 64, height 64. And if you remember, we gave medium screen also. Let's do the same thing here. It's gonna be 256 pixels. And let's give 500 pixels, for example. And awesome. Right now, I can give animation, but before, let's increase this font size. For this H1 tag, I'm gonna give a class name. Text size will be 8x large. Okay, let's give our animation. I will say motion.svg, animate. I'm gonna give a rotation. It's gonna be 360 degrees, and this animation will be infinite. So I will say transition. I will give duration. It's gonna be slower. Timing function. Let's say linear. It's not gonna slow down or speed up. It's gonna be linear. And the repeat will be infinity. Just like that. It's that easy. And when I click here, it's gonna open up the contact page. Okay. So let's take care of our items. Let's see. As you can see, a really huge title and image, and our button will be on the right side. I will come here and say class name, text X large, font will be bold, and when it's MD screen, it's gonna be 4x large, and for LG, 6, and finally for X large screens, it's gonna be 8. Just like that. Let's add our image. Okay, it's here, but it's not visible because we didn't give any height and width. Here, I will say 80, 56, and again for each screen it's going to be a different size. I'm just going to paste them. I don't want to waste time. There is nothing different here. We are just changing the image size. For the p tag, I'm going to give a width here, and it's going to be exactly the same. That because, as you can see, our image ends here, but the description is too long. I just want to end it here. So I'm going to use exactly the same size, 80, MD will be 96, LG will be 500, and X large will be 600. And for the LG screen, the text will be large also. Okay, and what about this button? Let's see our link here. I will say class name, background red 500. As you can see, its width is 100%. In this case, we can move our button to the right side. So if I say flex, let's remove this and say flex and justify and just like that. Let's give a style for this button. I'm gonna give some padding. Text will be small, and if it's MD screen, padding will be bigger and the text size will be MD. And I will do the same thing for the LG screen. Padding will be 8, text will be large, and the background color will be white, text color will be gray, let's say 600. Font weight will be semi-bold. I'm gonna give some margin, and it's gonna be rounded. Just like this. Okay, awesome. My works. And hire me. If you want to, you can change this background. I don't know, maybe it should be lighter. You can give background color for this portfolio container. If I say BG red and 300. Interesting. Maybe if I give lighter background, it will look better, but anyway, don't waste time. If I add something different, you can find it in the GitHub repository. Don't waste time and take care of our contact page. Let's see. As you can see, we have two parts, this animated part and this form. Let's create, but for the mobile screen, as you can see, it's going to be vertical. And after this point, this large point, we are going to split our screen. The first part will be this animated part, and the second part will be our form. Let's close here and open up contact. So I'm going to delete this text and create a new div. And I will say age full, and it's going to be flexbox, flex column, it's going to be vertical, and when it's the LG screen, as I said, flex will be row. Let's give this padding, by the way, Again, I'm going to open up my Navbar, copy this padding, and paste it here. Okay, let's say text container. One more, and it's going to be form container. And at the beginning, when it's the mobile screen, they are going to be the half screen. And when it's flex row, it's going to be h full, but this time the width will be the half screen. I will do the same thing for the other div, just like that. And inside this text container, we are going to have this animated text. Let's say motion.div. We can give here any text we want. So I'm going to create here text, and it's going to be say hello. And I'm going to use this text, and I'm going to separate each letter using split function. And it's going to return as an array that includes every single letter as A, Y, space, H, E, L, L, O. And using this array, I will say for each letter and the index number, return here motion.span. And I'm going to pass the letter here. Of course, if you are using map, as always, you need a key, and it's going to be the index number. I'm not giving letter because we can have duplication like this L. It's not unique, so we are going to be using this unique index. So let's give our animation, I will say initial, the opacity will be 1, and animate is going to be 0. And I can give transition effect. I will give a duration, it's going to be 3 seconds. Repeat will be infinity. And I'm going to give a delay using this index. Index 0.1. So for the first item, we will not have any delay, it's going to be 0. First item is going to be 0.1. Second item 0.2, 3, 4, 5. So we will be able to see this typing effect. And right after that, we are going to be using this emoji. I'm going to add this here. Let's see. By the way, we don't need this motion here. Okay, perfect. It works. Let's center our text and increase the font size. Item center, justify center. Text will be 6x large. Just like this. And after we are going to create our form. As you can see, the background color is this red color. And after we are going to have a text area that we can add our message. Another text, and input, we can add our email, another text, and finally the send button. So I will say span, dear Lama Dev, a text area. We are going to have 6 rows. I can self-close this. And another span. And what was that? Let's see. My mail address is, we are going to have an input here. And finally, regards. And right after that, we can add our button. And I will say send. Okay, let's give our background color BG red 50. It's going to be really light. I'm going to give rounded effect. It's going to be, let's say, X large. I'm going to increase the text size. Again, X large. And of course, they are going to be vertical. Let's say flex, flex call. Gap between each item will be 8. And I will say justify center. Let's give some padding. Okay. And let's remove this background color. BG will be transparent. I'm gonna give border bottom, let's say 2. Border bottom will be black. I'm gonna delete the outline. It's gonna be none. And as you can see, we can resize this. To prevent this, I will say resize none. Okay, what about here? We are gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna copy this and paste for our span. Of course, we cannot resize this. We don't need that. Just like that. And for our button, background will be purple. Let's say 200, rounded. Font weight will be semi-bold. And the text color will be gray and 600. Let's give some padding. Perfect. Let's check. As you can see, this size is bigger. Because I said row, it's going to be rows. Okay, awesome. And when we send our mail, if it's successful, we are going to see here a green message. If there's an error, it's going to be red. Let's first create here use states, const success and set success. Use state hook. At the beginning, it's going to be false, and I will do the same thing for the error. Right now, using those values, I can write my condition. After this button, I will say if success is true, right here a span, your message has been sent successfully. And one more. And I will say something went wrong. And it's going to be error. And in this case, it's going to be green. Let's say green 600. And font will be semi-bold. I'm going to copy this and paste for the error, and it's going to be red. Let's make this true and see. Awesome. And error. Okay. Let's take this back. And right now we are ready to send our mail. To do that, we are going to be using email.js. I think it's the easiest way. It gives you 500 free email per day. If you visit email.js.com and sign in, you are going to see this dashboard. Let's add a new service. I'm going to add my Gmail account, connect my account, and we are going to be using this service ID. I'm going to copy this, create service, and I'm going to store this ID in my env file. Let's open up our menu, and in the root directory, I'm going to create .env, and I will say next public service ID, and I'm going to paste it here. It's important to say next public because we are using a client-side component. If you don't write it, you won't be able to see your service ID. By the way, if you are using env file, write it into your git ignore file. I'll say .env. Otherwise, when you upload your code to GitHub or any other Git provider, everybody will be able to see your service ID, but it should be a secret. So this is how we are hiding this. And after that, we are going to create an email template. As you can see, there's a default template. When somebody sends a message, we are going to see its name, its message, and its email. If you want to, you can change here. Let's say email. I'll say user email. And I'm going to use it here. Oops, let's say edit. We don't need this. I'm going to delete. And I will say user_message. So basically, this message will be this text area message. And user email will be this input. These are important because we have to use them in our form. So I'm going to come here and say name user. What was the name? User message. And this input is going to be name user email. Don't forget them, otherwise you won't be able to reach your mail. And this is our mail address. We have already connected. We don't have to change that. By the way, let's apply changes and save. What's that, by the way? Okay. And I'm going to open up settings and I'm going to copy this template ID. Again, env file and change this ID, and it's going to be template ID. And one more, I'm going to open up my account. As you can see, there's a public key. We are going to copy this, and the last ID will be public ID. Actually, let's say public key. Okay, right now we can use them in our application. Let's come back and open up documentation. And I'm going to scroll down and find React. As you can see, we are going to need this library. I'm going to open up my console and I will say npm install email.js. And after that, we are going to need useRef hook, and we are going to pass it to our form. And it's going to automatically find our inputs and text areas, and using their names, we will be able to send our message. And as you can see, we are going to pass here our service ID, template, and public key. So let's copy here. I'm going to close my console and paste it here. Let's import. Let's import email.js and pass this ref here, our form. And right now we can use our env file. I will say process.env, and remember what was the name? Next public service ID. I'm going to copy this. It's going to be template ID. And finally, process env public key. Public key. Let's see. Okay. And after, if it's successful, I will say set success. And it's going to be true. And after that, we are going to reset our form. Current.reset. So if it's successful, we are going to remove our inputs. And for here, I will say set error. It's going to be true. And if there's an error here, and when we try to send again, we have to remove that message. So at the beginning, I'm going to say set error false again and success. So when we click on this button, we are going to remove all our messages first. And after, we are going to send. If there is an error, we are going to set our state. Or if it's successful, we are going to set the success and reset our form. Okay, Let's use it in our form, and I will say on submit and pass it here. Let's try. I'm gonna say test message hello@gmail.com. I will send, and as you can see, it's successful. If you open up your Gmail account, you can see that message right now. And that's all, I think. Portfolio, contact page, about page. There's an awesome SVG animation here. And that's all. So let's deploy our application. To deploy our application, we are gonna need all the HTML and JavaScript files. To do that, we should build our application. I'm gonna open up my terminal and I will say npm run build. But before, we need some configuration because our application is static. That means we don't have to use Node.js. There is nothing dynamic here. Only thing we should do is upload our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files into our hosting. Let's open up documentation. As you can see, we have three options. Our website will be static. And the first thing we should do is open up the Next.js configuration, and inside this object, we are gonna write output export. Let's come here, like that. And one more thing, since we are using our own hosting, we are gonna need an image loader. Because remember, we are using Next.js image component, and it stores all the files inside this cached folder. If you don't write your own loader, you won't be able to see your images. So let's scroll down. And I'm gonna click on here and loader file configuration. And as you can see, we are gonna need loader and our loader file. Just like that. And let's say the root folder. And I'm gonna create this file inside my root folder. Just like that. And here, as you can see, we are gonna take the image source, its width and quality. And after this point, if you want to, you can use any third-party image optimizer. But in our application, we have just 5 or 6 images. We don't need any additional configuration. We are just gonna return our domain name and the image path. Remember, we have our images here. In this case, it's gonna be our domain name, Facebook PNG, Hero PNG, or any others. But there is one more thing. Remember, we are using some external images, like that, images.paxhouse.com. In this case, we are gonna return this URL. What I mean by that? Let's come here and paste this. And I'm gonna write here a condition. I will say, if source starts with paxhouse.com, we are gonna return that URL directly. If not, we are gonna write here our domain name and the image path. Let's save. And I'm gonna come here and say npm run build. Okay, there is something wrong. Let's see. Oh, I just put them inside remote patterns. It's gonna be inside images. Let's build again. And right now, as you can see, we have the out folder, and inside we have all our images, HTML and JavaScript files. So using this folder, we are gonna upload our files into our hosting. Let's come here, open up the H panel, and I'm gonna choose File Manager. As you can see, this is our main folder. We are going to upload everything inside this folder. Let's open up our project folder and choose out. I'm going to select everything, drag, and drop here. Let's see. And our website is ready. Let's check our pages. Perfect. Portfolio. Okay, Pexas images are here. And the contact page. Okay, and as you can see, our connection is secure because we have a free SSL certificate. And that's all. And in the future, we will create tons of different projects, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you learned something new today, please like the video. Don't forget to follow Lama Dev's social media accounts. I hope I'll see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.